Boom. All right. Hello, and welcome to the Rock Metal Podcast. I am your host, John Harris. On my right-hand side is my right-hand man, Gabriel.
We have some stars. We need a
Paradigm.
Paradigm, okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little tricky name.
It is a tricky name. Today on the Rock Metal Podcast, we have Isle of the Cross, who has a new album called Excelsis. Did I say that correctly?
Excelsis.
Excelsis.
However you like, John.
Okay. Excelsis, which was released earlier this year via Rockshots Records. Right now I'm being joined by Jay to share some more information about the record, what the band has been up to, what they've got coming down the pipeline. So Jay, welcome to the show.
Right on. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Great to have you on. And one of the reasons I'm excited in particular to have you on is I understand it, you pretty much did everything on this record, or am I misinterpreting the information that's across my desk?
Pretty much everything. Sending out some parts for vocals and for Eric to lay down some lead guitars and whatnot. But other than that, yeah.
Okay. Well, then take us through how you wore all these different hats. I mean, being a producer and a mixer and I guess a mastering engineer is an easy set of hats because you could produce it to set it up for the mix and you could mix it to set it up for the master, and you kind of just, or maybe even do it quasi simultaneously. But how did you wear all the hats and keep yourself separate? Well,
it started just with with just writing material, and in that album I actually I was mixing each individual track as I finished them, and which is a little bit backwards. Normally it's going to be after the project or all the material's written. So I was writing each track, mixing each track, had some lyric ideas for each track kind of in the middle of writing. And then anyway, of course, once it was all done and I sent out the tracks to the guys to do their parts, got them back, and then finalized them and mastered it, and then wrapped it up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so was the whole thing then, like you mentioned sending things out, was this being done remotely?
Yeah, I did it all from my house or my home studio.
Okay, perfect. Now, with regard to the record and how this year has gone, was this record going to happen anyway the way that it did, or has this year really changed the way this record was going to be done, produced, and even released?
No, really, it was going to be done regardless. Started, of course, before you're talking, of course, with our lovely virus and our beautiful pandemic and all the other.
And all the things that have gone along with it. You can't just have the turkey at the table. You got to have the stuffing and the mashed potatoes, and there's even some cranberry sauce in there somewhere too, I imagine.
Yeah. So yeah, it was. I had already started prior to this year. They released it in February, but it was done the end of 2019.
Okay, so then I'm released in February. I mean, Europe was in shambles pretty much by about that point, but in the U.S. not so much yet. Right. So I guess the plan then was to just release it in February, out to the world, and get on with what you would do, touring and such.
Yeah, and touring, it wasn't really, there weren't any terms set up with Rockshots as far as touring, and there's a possibility to tour, but there wasn't ever any real plan on that, at least at the moment.
Okay. Were you signed to Rockshots before the release of the record, or did you shop with the album and then get signed to Rockshots?
Yeah, they heard the album, and then I signed with them after they had heard it. So, yeah, I hadn't been signed prior.
Okay. I mean, the sound on it is absolutely incredible. So it's one of the reasons why I was excited to chat with you, because sometimes when somebody's doing everything by themselves in a home studio setting, it can sound like it, but it doesn't sound like it with what you did. So
yeah.
Oh, thanks a lot. Yeah, I wouldn't put it out there. I'm kind of a freak about that, and that's kind of a nice thing doing it myself. I can sit here all day and night. I don't have to depend on anybody else. If I have, 1 second of, one little section of one song that maybe 1 or 2 seconds long that I just really need to dial in and hone in, and I like a bit of that control per se, if you will. But it's nice to have some outside ears too, and opinions. Like, for instance, the next album coming up is going to be mixed by Simone Molaroni, and he's out of Italy. Of course, he's a fairly well-known mixing engineer, and so he's going to be doing this next album. Not to jump into that now, but I'm actually excited for that versus having to wear every single hat on Excelsis.
Mm-hmm. So it got tiring.
Well, it's tiring, and it's definitely, it's a huge job, but I love it to death. But I just think that the next album needs to have just some outside ears on it. And there were numerous things with Excelsis that I thought next album coming needs to, go to a different engineer.
Okay.
And that way also focus a lot more on just the writing aspect of things, and know that, the mixing will be on somebody else's shoulders.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious, without jumping too much into the next album, but since we're chatting about it, it's on the noggin. What's up, kiddo?
I tried Logic in that Simon thing.
That's not Logic, sweetie. That's Pro Tools.
Oh, I will try Logic though.
He's learning young. I love it.
Yeah.
That's right there.
Yeah. Oh, no, you know what? I stand corrected. That is Logic. Okay. Good eye there, kiddo. And that would be exactly why you chose Simone, because he uses Logic Pro. Is that?
Well,
I'm actually I'm a 20+ year Pro Tools user. I've never used any other DAW other than Master Tracks back in the mid to early 90s.
Okay.
So I'm just Pro Tools.
Okay. But that was going to be my next question is, out of all of the mixing and mastering engineers and all the ones who are also well-known, I mean, you could have picked anybody, especially with this particular genre of music. Jacob Hansen comes to mind, among a few other people. So how come Simone?
Well, it was weird. I just was driving one day, and lovely YouTube, I had this recommended band, Nightland, and turned it on, and just, sometimes you randomly I'll just listen to it. So I'm listening going, man, good band, great songs, great band, great songs. But this mix is just killer. And we were on about an hour drive, and so I was able to make it through almost the whole album. I thought, geez, and this was just about when I was finished with Excelsis. And that's kind of why I was thinking, I feel the mix for Excelsis came out good. It's solid. It's I like it. But when I was listening to like Nightland and various other albums, there was just another level that I wanted this next album to go to. And so I was thinking to myself, man, I wonder who that engineer was. So I looked it up, and it's Simone Molaroni and whatnot. And then I get in touch with Roberto at Rockshots, the label agent. And he said, oh, yeah, I know Simone really well, and he's mixed a whole bunch of albums for us. And I thought, what the heck? So then it turns out Nightland was on Rockshots years ago. So it's just kind of a small world moment. But anyway, that helped out a lot, because there's already some inroads that have been made from Rockshots, and Simone's been great in all of our communication. He's a rare few that actually responds right away to emails. So anyway.
How do you really feel there, Jay?
Yeah, exactly. That's a whole other subject. That's probably a 3 or 4 hour conference.
Beautiful. Now, this leads nicely into, okay, so you couldn't go out on tour or do other traditional methods to promote the record because of how things have gone. So is that what you've been using your time for, is getting into the next record and lining up those pieces?
Oh, yeah. There's not a dull minute here at the house. I mean, if I'm not working, there's a problem. It's working, or it's just laziness, and I don't do laziness. I mean, my family and I hang quite a bit, and my wife and I are, still trying to actually have a relationship, so many years later. So, but other than that, I work nonstop, and I'm actually a bit excited because I'm just finishing up just about the last few minutes of at least written material for the whole next album.
Okay.
Which has been an undertaking. It's going to be it's just a bit more involved of an album.
Okay. Now, that is a can of worms statement. Leads me into a question of what in the world do you mean? But let's go ahead and talk about the current record.
I know. I'm sorry. I keep jumping ahead.
It's okay. It's okay. With the current record, so more involved, more a next level you had mentioned. So, take us through this record. What is this record about? It seems thematic. what is the theme? What is the concept? Is there a concept? Is there a theme? What is this record about? What did you aim to give to us? What are we holding in our hand right now?
Okay, so that's Excelsis, or are we talking
Excelsis?
Excelsis. So, to start really at the beginning, and in all honesty, Excelsis was really just pretty conceptual and experimental. It's like there were some people getting irritated with the litany of genres, subgenres I was having to throw at it and describe it as, and it's really just because that's really the truth. You got tech death, you got symphonic in there, you got some power metal, you just have everything going on, and it really is a giant collage of insanity. It was even thrown out there a few times by various people, and I like that to a point. And like, for instance, Stars is like this kind of softer, more melodic symphonic track, and you got Sacrifice that kicks it all off with just right into some heavy riffing and some serious tech death and whatnot, to a couple instrumental, more symphonic power metal style tracks. Thematic is always kind of how I like to do things, but it's definitely a collage of stuff going on. And it was said many times that it's a hard listen, and I grew to understand that, after I kind of really thought. I was like, yeah, I guess for the average listener, or for your typical listener that wants to stick within one, maybe two genres / subgenres of metal, it's going to be a bit more all over the place.
Yeah, you could call it collage metal, and then you'll have
Hey, you coined it. There it is.
Yeah, there it is, right there. And then you'll have melodic collage metal, and then progressive, technical, melodic collage metal. It'd be great.
Yeah.
And then post collage metal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Now, I guess then, did you find that, because as you were describing these things, it kind of makes me think of something Devin Townsend-esque, where you potentially even have, I don't know, every freaking genre in one song.
Yeah.
Did you find maybe that you were going for something like that? Did it happen maybe a little bit more organically? And with regard to the listener base, do you find that your listeners are in line with maybe more progressive elements?
Yeah, it just as an experiment, I really wasn't even thinking of any listeners, to be honest. I've been writing my whole life, and I write in a lot of different genres and whatnot, but so I really, and that's kind of part of the problem, I really wasn't aiming at one specific group or one specific genre or subgenre of metal, which then again led to just kind of whatever was coming out and whatever inspiration I had after finishing the prior track. So that's why there's a lot of variation, and I'm glad that Rockshots enjoys it, and a lot of people seem to enjoy the variation, but others, which I understand, don't want all this variation all over the place. So it really was just a track by track. I heard Archspire's album Relentless Mutation and thought that was just an absolutely brilliant, genius album, and so I kind of geared the Wolf and the final track and the Inferno track kind of in that tech death style.
Mm-hmm.
Highly differs from a number of other tracks on the album. You got Stars, the soft symphonic track, and then you have the prior track is the Wolf, which is just throwing everything at it. So
yeah, beautiful. Okay, now I guess from a production standpoint, just because I think it's interesting, because I don't often get a chance to chat with the producer or the mixer or even the mastering engineer, how did you treat the different genres from that perspective? Did you have to take a different mixing or production standpoint with almost each section of the song or each song?
That's a good question. A little bit. Again, like with Stars, I wanted a little bit more of a darker, thicker, more gothic-ish mix versus like more your tech, faster stuff that is very detailed and dialed. It needs to just be very tight, and you can't have it as wet. You can't have it things sitting in a cathedral. So and of course, treating each song based on what it needs.
Yeah.
So there's a number of different sounds, and actually that was, at the end of the day, that was what I was happy with, regardless of the subgenre variation. I was happy with the fact that, at least for me, beginning to end, it did have as much variation as there is, at least a fairly good consistency in the mix, even though some had to be treated a bit differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Something that was mentioned a couple of times, we've chatted a little bit about it, was signing to Rockshots. What was that like for you to do this as an experiment, not even really care about a listenership, but then at some point you said, well, I have an album, I might as well do something with it.
Exactly.
So what was that like when Roberto wrote back and said, yeah, we can do this?
Yeah, it was cool. It was they seemed to really like it, and then the more I looked up, a lot of their stuff, they definitely delve, in some different subgenres, and but yeah, as the album went on, that's exactly what I was thinking. I thought, if it comes out, decent enough, maybe I'll shoot it over to some different labels and whatnot, and see what happens, and they seemed to really like it, and I thought, well, cool. I'm never about the money in this. That's never my drive with anything musically and with any art form. And so that just hasn't been a concern. And, there's not a lot of money that's going to come in from it anyway. I was
about to say, you're in progressive metal. I think jazz musicians make more money.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to it's like, so if it's not based on money and, it's mostly just the passion and the fun, then, hey, having a good distributor like Rockshots, I mean, they've been amazing with just crazy the amount of different vein of distribution there are out there.
Yes, absolutely. Beautiful. Now, going more particular to these tracks we were going to chat about today, Stars and Paradigm. We've chatted quite a bit about Stars. It's you said a more gothic mix. I definitely noticed, especially in the vocal, that it was EQ'd a bit thicker. It really helps to give the ballad-like vibe to it.
Yeah.
But where do these tracks or Stars, where does it fit in the record? Is there a storyline? Is there a protagonist?
Yeah.
What is this track about, and where does it fit in the record?
There's a loose storyline going on. I mean, there's a number of tracks that have nothing to do with the story, actually. And so it's kind of, that was part of the difficulty in explaining it at the end of the day. But the concept of the album, since it's not an exact perfect story from beginning to end, it's more of a concept album in that case, is simply put, two lovers being separated, one dies and they're basically just trying to find each other in the afterlife. It's just kind of a loose Romeo and Juliet style story of, they love each other so much that their love can go beyond our world. And when they meet in the afterlife, or they hopefully, get reacquainted in the afterlife, then they're living with each other for eternity. So yeah, it's just various concepts were hitting each of some various tracks of the entire album that tell a bit of that story.
Yeah, I'm reminded of Spawn. I'm reminded of The Crow.
Yeah.
So good job going gothic there.
Thank you.
Now, Paradigm, does this track fit into that story? Yeah,
Paradigm's in the story. Basically, he's basically already in the other world. He's in the afterlife, and he essentially the song is trying to tell the story of how he has the option of crossing over. Which I've always I was kind of pulling from my own thoughts about ghosts and whatnot, and are there ghosts, or are ghosts even real, or ghosts just a myth? But where usually when people say that, hey, ghosts exist here because they're obviously tied to something or tied to somebody, and they haven't wanted to cross over yet, maybe there's just unsettled feelings or whatever. So that's basically what Paradigm is. He doesn't want to cross over without his love, because basically that can separate them for eternity. He just wants to be able to be reacquainted with her.
Mm-hmm. Here we are on the Ghost Talk podcast.
Yeah.
Are ghosts real?
Sorry.
Let's chat it out.
Sorry.
Well, that's a good question. I always refer to them as apparitions, but are apparitions different from ghosts?
I think they're the same thing.
Okay. Gabesy here wants to... You want to ask a question, or you just want to tell him something?
We can mix, and we both use Logic, so you can send us some multi-tracks, and then we could mix them in Logic, and then we can send them back to you.
Woo! Future star here. I'm telling you.
That's right. One of us has to make money.
Man. I love it. Well, brother, I can send you some tracks. You should be able to pull them in from Pro Tools into Logic, buddy.
Sweet.
That's one to watch right there.
Yeah. Can you hear that? Instead of send you some tracks, you can pull them in from Pro Tools into Logic.
I'd love to hear your mixes. I want to hear what you do to them.
Yeah. He said he would love to hear your mixes.
Yeah. Well, we basically don't use Pro Tools. I just use Logic more often than Pro Tools.
We've got ways, kiddo. We've got ways.
Ah, we got a Logic snob, huh?
Logic snob.
All right.
I know. The other side of that coin is the Cubase snob, and we are definitely not one of those.
There's
Yeah.
those.
3 people in a row that use Keybase on one of the shows that we watch on your Academy.
Ah, I see.
Uh-huh. Yeah, there's a program we subscribe to called Nail the Mix, or the URM Ultimate Recording Machine Academy.
Yeah.
And so we get to watch mix engineers work on projects that have gone live a year ago, sometimes 10 years ago, depending on what it is.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of them are Pro Tools, but the ones that aren't Pro Tools are usually niched into Cubase. We've seen some Logic. I have not seen Reaper yet, which doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But I know how popular it can be, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, URM's great. URM's great.
Awesome. Sweet. He watches URM too.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you already know about Nail Mix?
He already knows about Nail the Mix.
Cool.
That's why he was able to nail his mix.
Yeah. I'm not sure what those guys would have said at the end of the day, but I was happy with it. They might have said, what's this all about? Or, what are you doing here?
Yeah, well, I mean, the funny thing is, obviously, you can hear things that you want to work on, and if I listen to it, I'm sure I could hear things I might find. But I think the important thing, and what Al always says, is you had the balls to work on it, and not just work on it, but air it to the world. So,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, that's there's a lot of truth in that, and that's the thing. It's like I said, I'm not going to put anything out. I don't think any artist, it's not just me, wants to put anything out there that's halfway. I mean, at the end of the day, you really want to put something that's dialed, and the bar is so high this day and age. I mean, everything is just absolutely precisely perfect, as you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And URM makes a good case for that too. So you gotta just work it till it's just right, and sometimes it's just barely tweaking the smallest things. And that's what I was, again, appreciating, that I can do this on my own, at least on the last album.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that you're getting some help onto the next album. You're bringing it up to the next level. What is that level? Without giving away too much, what can we expect from the next album?
Well, as far as mix-wise, you're thinking, or storyline?
It could be any or all of those things. I mean, I wrote down that you said you wanted to take it to the next level, and so I said, okay, later on in the interview, I'll ask, what's that next level?
Yeah, thanks. In that case, it's the things I hear missing in Excelsis. I think there's a little bit, maybe there's some overcompression going on, and maybe still there's a number of tracks that aren't hitting just as hard as I would like, which I think that someone like Simone will really be able to key in on. And there's also just again, new ears, outside ears are really important when you've been dealing with a track for weeks and weeks, if not months, and then you got to go mix it. There just can be sometimes just natural irritation and just lack of patience sometimes versus somebody else doing it on the outside. And someone like him who's a longtime pro, he'll definitely be able to get it closer to where I'm thinking than I would.
Okay, so you're thinking that's more on the mix side than on the production side or the arrangement side.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm doing everything else, and I mean, Simone will master it also, but other than mixing and mastering, I'll be doing everything else as far as, at least I'm writing all the material and lyrics and whatnot, and the storyline.
Okay. Have you considered working with a third-party producer?
I have at certain times, but there's not much of a need at the moment. If I pretty much have the concept down, I know exactly what I'm looking for. But there's some that, of course, I would love to work with. That just the dollar signs start getting, larger and larger. Anymore, the more names I start thinking, it's like, yeah.
Do I really have $700 per song minimum? No. I'm doing progressive metal here. I can't.
They're like 700. That's the first 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Groovy. Now we've chatted about Stars, Paradigm, there's lyric videos that are available for those tracks. So today's show notes, which are available on the website, www.therockmetalpodcast.ca, in the information section on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, that'll be down below. Should be available also on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever it is that you're listening or watching. You'll be able to check out those lyric videos. We chatted about the album Excelsis. We've chatted about the next album coming up. We chatted about this year. Is there anything that I missed? Anything that you wanted to chat about that I did not bring up, Jay?
No, I think we're good, man.
Okay.
It's been a lot of good stuff.
Mm-hmm. It is a lot of good stuff. It's a good album. I hope people listen to it front to back and find it tastefully done. I know you mentioned a couple times people were saying, "Oh, it's too much." Well, you got to find the people who say it's just right.
And I mean, your question's a lot of good stuff. I'm not saying the album's got a lot of good stuff. I leave that up to everybody else to say. And there's as you may have seen, giant mix of reviews.
Mm-hmm.
So, as far as a lot of good stuff, I don't even say that. I mean, it's amazing too when you get working on another album. I haven't honestly listened to it much in the last 10 or 11 months, because my mind is so much geared in just what I'm doing now. So it's interesting here and there to see something pop up and, hey, somebody actually liked it, or someone actually said, no, what is another person saying, what is this all about again?
Yeah. Beautiful. All right. So. Well, if there's nothing else, then Jay, I just wanted to thank you for coming on to the Rock Metal Podcast today.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate it. It's good to meet you, man.
Pleasure indeed.
Yeah.
Go ahead, stop, please, sweetie.